On behalf of Team Financial Insight, aka the Media Machine, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for taking time out to attend our third workshop. Round of applause, people. If you're part of the first workshop, I think I said what needed to be said. The whole purpose of the media workshop is to bring together our community, the media community. But like with everything, you can't do it alone. So on behalf of my team, I would like to thank the management teams at KoBold and Prospect Resources. I believe KoBold are in the view. Thank you so much in believing in what we're trying to do. The master classes, I'm sure you've seen on our YouTube channel and on our platforms, are fast gaining a lot of popularity. Even I've been taken aback at how well they've actually performed. In fact, one of our highest watched videos on YouTube is actually a masterclass from here. I'm not trying to add pressure to the guys that will be conducting, because we carefully select the people that actually come to speak to us for the simple reason that the media deserve only the best. And this is why events such as this one become ever so important, because we're hoping that this becomes a platform for knowledge sharing and networking. So I will not say too much. This is actually for you. And yeah, as they say, let the show start.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a privilege to stand before you today, a room full of storytellers and bridge builders between the industry and the public. On behalf of Prospect Resources, I want to thank you for being here and for recognizing that mining exploration is more than just a prelude to mining. It is the first chapter in the story of resource development, and the one that determines how the rest of the book is written. When most people think of mining, they picture trucks hauling ore, plant processing minerals, or export figures in the news. But before that, there's a stage that happens quietly, often in remote corners of the country, the exploration phase. This is where geologists, engineers, and environmental scientists all come together, mapping rock formations, collecting samples, and analyzing data. It is here that first sparks the opportunity that are struck. So without successful exploration, there is no mining. And without mining, there's no supply for industries that power our daily lives, from the copper in our electrical wiring to the lithium in the batteries of your phones, your cars, and renewable energy systems. Now, let's talk about you, the journalists. You're the ones who turn complex processes into compelling stories. You're the ones who help the public understand, assimilate, understand why we're drilling, why a drilling rig is in a rural community, and it matters to the world's clean energy transition. Your reporting can either feed myths or fuel understanding. And understanding is what we need more than ever. The conversation about mining in Zambia should not just be about exports and revenues. It should be about exploration as a result of an investment into the nation's future, about responsible practices, about how we balance economic growth with environmental protection, and the like. We welcome your scrutiny. In fact, we rely on it. A sector cannot withstand tough questions that has no business asking for public trust. At Prospect Resources, our focus is not only discovering valuable mineral deposits, but on discovering them responsibly. We're currently exploring resources that will shape not just Zambia's future, but it's also its economy. It is also going to shape the world's transition into cleaner technologies. We take pride in ensuring that our exploration activities respect the environment, safeguard biodiversity, and involve the communities where we work. This means local employment opportunities, training for young Zambians, and partnerships with local businesses. Because we strike a resource, it should benefit more than our shareholders. It should also benefit Zambia. So mining exploration is about resilience. It's about having the courage to invest years into projects where there's no guarantee of success. Because the payoff, if we get it right, is transformative. Mining is also about recognizing that minerals we explore for today will be the backbone of tomorrow's industries. Electric mobility, renewable power, advanced manufacturing, and Zambia is rich with these opportunities, but unlocking them requires trust, it requires transparency, and it requires vision. So my message to you today is relatively simple. Let's work together. You have the platforms, the voice, the reach. We have the expertise, the projects, and the willingness to be open about them. Together, we can ensure that when the public hears about mining exploration, or when they hear about a mining project, they hear about a story of hope, responsibility, and shared prosperity. I thank you for your time, for your commitment to balanced reporting, and for the role you play in shaping the public's understanding of our industry. Let's make today's workshop not only just an exchange of information, but the start of a stronger partnership between the mining sector and the media.
Hello everyone, my name is Eric Lautier. I'm the IMF Resident Representative here in Zambia, and I wish to congratulate Financial Insight on their third media workshop. I would like to remind you to look at our staff report on the IMF Fifth Review, which contains all the discussions that we have with the government, all the details, the numbers, and the commitments that many people refer at the IMF conditionalities. Everything is in the open. So please Google IMF staff report Fifth Review, and you will see it in our website. You can download it and read it. And if you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out to me or to Mwelwa, and we'll potentially organize a discussion around it if you'd like. Have a good workshop.
I've been with KoBold for two years now, and I'm currently the Geology Manager there. And at KoBold, we run with one motto, which is essentially finding the critical metals, resources that Mr. Mwelwa spoke about, but with the use of AI and I want to repeat it again, and HI, okay? So I want to ask in the room to say how many, or what is HI? Let's go. Come on, somebody should say, hi sir, what is HI? Human intelligence, yes. So we really want to emphasize this, to say, especially at KoBold, our approach, we're embracing AI, but working together with a human intelligence. And in this space, we are referring to the mind of the geologist who is involved in the exploration, alongside every other human who is helping to, in the search for these minerals. Okay? Our forefathers right here in Zambia used to make tools out of even copper ornaments, right? Most of these minerals were found very near surface, okay? You didn't need to be a geologist. You didn't need any special skills, but we still found tools that, that were made of these commodities that we are looking for today. So moving a little bit fast forward, the mines, most of the mines that we're exploiting today, you hear of a story that somebody was chasing an antelope, and after hitting it, it falls on malachite-stained copper, and then it becomes the Ron antelope mine in Luasha, okay? So what am I trying to say? With time passing, most of those easy deposits are running out, or right now they've all been found, most of them at least, okay? So what is happening now, the deposits that will feed today's needs and tomorrow's needs are getting deeper, or basically you have to search deeper to find those deposits, okay? And with depth comes more technical challenges, because something that is deeper, you have to use different tools and to get to them, right? So it just works out logically like that. Huh? So it becomes a lot more expensive. So yeah, as deposits are becoming deeper, they are much more technically difficult to find and very expensive. So we are now at a turn that we must have an entire paradigm shift to the way that we look at exploration. We have to change our methods. We have to innovate more and become smarter at what we are doing. So this is the space, or this is the point where artificial intelligence becomes a very critical enabler. And I also want to underline that word, enabler, okay?
We are going to discuss the mining exploration cycle, which is basically a series of stages that mining companies or geologists follow to discover, 1, evaluate, 2, and develop a mineral resource. So, many times we hear there is copper there is sujilite in Luapula, there is copper, gold in Mfumbwe, there is copper, gold in Rufunsa, there is gold in Petauke, and I've been to all those places. There is lithium in Mapatizia, and people say we have so many minerals. But what should guide a resource that can be exploited or mined are those things. So every time someone comes up with such a story, we need, as journalists, to ask, what is the evaluation? Evaluation means, okay, you are saying you've discovered. Let's skip the discovery because you've told us there is this. Okay, so that's a discovery. The next step is evaluation. The question that all journalists never ask is, how much is your resource? Because if you are going to come to me, if I'm going to go to Mr. Sitwala or any other company, how am I going to explain to an investor who is in Canada that there is gold in Mfumbwe? I need to do an evaluation. So when that happens, the correct question to ask is, how much is the gold? What of maybe I was just walking, some of you are so blessed with money, maybe you had a gold ring and you dropped it there and someone picked it and they say, oh, I've discovered gold or I've discovered copper. Maybe one day a truck carrying copper fell off and left the copper there. Or thieves stole copper and they ran away, left the copper there. And then you pick one piece of copper and you say, oh, I've discovered copper. That's why we have to evaluate. And once we evaluate, the next thing is, can this be developed? Now, let's always remember that mining is a business. Mining is a business. The same way we go to the market to buy a phone at 2,000 and sell it at 2,500, you make a profit of 500. You have to have, when you are doing a business, you need to understand how much of this am I going to invest in and how much am I going to make. So I hope we are understanding where we want to go. That's on the development side. And then the other one is mining. Now, I will just say quickly the breakdown because we might not have a lot of time. And so Mr. Chibesakunda can call me again. So, What happens is, the first thing that happens and we'll also touch the same, the first thing that happens to any mining activity is exploration. What is exploration? Exploration is simply a research. It's simply a research. So we are saying, normally, how do we do this research? I've just put two pictures there. One picture on the left is what Mr. Sitwala was talking about. A plane is flying around and it's looking at the properties of the earth, because you know the earth is just full of minerals, and the same minerals that have different properties. Others are heavy, others are lighter, others conduct electricity, others doesn't. So when you are looking for copper, your copper is what makes your electricity come home. So if it is in the ground, it will still conduct and all those things. So geos have all these things they look at. The other thing, which I'm still learning AI, that is me on a mountain in Egypt, looking for, doing what? Exploration. So what we are saying is we use historical literature, imagery, airborne geophysics, and geological mapping. Now, when we say historical, it's not the first time that Zambia has done mining. Mining has been done, like Mr. Sitwala said, from the ancient times. So there is a lot of literature on anything that I want to embark on. I now start studying. I'm in Zambia. I'm looking for copper. What information do we have about copper? So I start reading books. I start reading literature. And then I can say, okay, they discovered copper in Rwanda in 1973, and there is Mopani there. Now Kansanshi in 2008 came here. So the best way that I'm going to do is let me go this side. So now I choose where to go after I do my literature review. And then whichever area I'm going to go to, there's been always people who have been there, other companies. Now, like Mr. Sitwala was saying, geology is very subjective. And the reason why people explore are also very different. Others want to explore to sell. Others want to explore to understand. Others want to explore for consumption. So if I go in an area, I do my work, I feel like, this is not supporting our company idea, so we leave. But that information remains. Sometimes at Geological Survey, sometimes at ZCCM, sometimes within the group, the geos. So that's the review. The next thing, we even use images. You can look at images, you see where there's been some activities of mining and blah, blah, blah. So the first part is just helping you to identify a promising mineral district or region.
So I'll just start with, obviously, a very basic topic or sub-theme around spotting PRS pins. I believe many of us in newsrooms, we should have received a press release, an invitation from time to time from different organizations, including organizations involved in the mining and exploration. So what will be important, obviously, in the newsroom, there are different structures. So what we need to understand is majority of the time, such kind of communication or invitations will go to the senior most person, who ideally should be an editor. So what we should actually look out for sometimes is when we do receive these statements or invitations, do we have the time and capacity to really go beyond what has been shared with us? Because many of the times, mines, and obviously everyone involved in the mining value chain, they'll try and punt their messaging so that you don't get to know what they do behind the scenes. So what we need to do now is, obviously, I know newsrooms are shrinking. A lot of newsrooms don't even have, like a mining reporter or specialist. So many of the times, such topics will fall on the business desk, which are competing with other many more topics, which are happening from the financial services, the telecom, the manufacturing, and many more other sectors. So do we get to find time and obviously analyze further to see what does this really mean? Or are we reporting beyond the headlines that are given to us? I've seen obviously information in the public domain which speaks about a big expansion project with a lot of investment. Do we take time to go beyond what that means? Have we benchmarked with other markets where similar investments have been done so that we can report better? As journalists also, are we taking time to use AI to help us improve our reporting and how we frame our questions? Because what I've picked, and obviously, I mean, just not within the Zambian market, but across other markets as well, you'll see that the way statements are written, 99.9%, it's how they'll be published or communicated to the general public. So do we take time to analyze, digest that information, generate questions and ask more questions so that we can help, break it down for an average Zambian and also give information that we think will benefit that very person that we want to communicate to. So mines, obviously, like my previous speaker spoke, it's a business. And what a business will do is obviously try and paint a positive image about themselves and what they're doing. So you see the mining industry, or in that space, they are not so very heavy on commercial advertising like other businesses, but where they punt a lot of money, it's in CSR projects and sponsorships. So in communities where they are operating, you will obviously be aware of sponsoring a particular golf tournament, building an ablution block, probably maybe helping a hospital, a school, sponsoring a certain segment of people in the community, going to the chiefdom, traditional ceremonies and so forth. But do we go beyond what they are doing to understand, like the person was talking about the legal fraternity in terms of how they need to be compliant and operate? Do we go to understand, do they meet all the requirements for them to be doing business in this space? How are they feeding into key sectors of the economy? How are they helping the education sector, the health? Maybe probably you could go to agriculture and many more other sectors where they would need help. What's also important to consider is when they're communicating with newsrooms or media houses, how are they helping the media houses themselves? Because that becomes a critical stakeholder. Are they providing training to us? Because obviously you've heard a lot of people talk about technical things, the mining process itself, exploration, and just the involvement of a lot of money involved. Are they coming to us as partners who they can then help upskill and equip so that we report better and help people understand what mining is? I know a lot of us obviously are thinking to say, but if we talk bad about them, probably, mining is a political topic also to some extent. Because if you report badly about it, chances are that IBA, if you're a broadcast media house, they'll pull out your operating license. To some extent, if you're a community radio station, they'll stop funding you to some extent. It means it will hamper your operations. But how do we still maintain our professionalism, capturing the 5 Ws and the H, but at the same time also be able to do checks and balances to ensure that the mining space is doing the right thing at the right time? So now I'll make it interactive by asking, so from the mines and the small-scale miners that we've interacted with at different levels, how have we helped shape the reporting in the mining space so far? So anyone who's bold enough, yeah, please go ahead.
Well, for me, I just want to highlight the fact that mining is such a big issue in the country now, because as many people have said, it's our biggest contributor to GDP, but also there's been a lot of pronouncements and a lot of reforms in the mining sector. There's an ambitious 3 million metric tons of copper to be mined. There's this mine that has been opened. There's some brownfield mines that are being sort of revived. There's greenfields. There's aerial geophysical mapping, and there's so many things that are happening in the mining sector, and it's exciting. It's exciting because we all know that once the mining sector is back to life, then we all have a good economy. But there's a lot of things that have been happening. I've had the privilege to go to one mining site in Mpika, in Chinga province, where artisanal miners are using things like mercury to be able to, extract their mineral. That is very harmful. And then you look around that place, so much wealth, but very little to, for the local community to show. There's very little that shows that, okay, here, there's gold. And when you talk about gold, you're thinking wealth. There are no hospitals, there are no schools. You find babies at the mining site. It's crazy. Just being in that space, you realize that, things are really, really crazy. If you think your life was crazy, when you go to such places, you realize that there's so much that can be talked about. And sometimes you'd want to tell stories that highlight such difficulties in those mining areas. But then again, you look at the fact that maybe this particular entity took you there and probably they paid for advertising and so on and so forth. It becomes very, very difficult. But like you said, the journalistic intuition or ethics will kick in to be able to just report as objectively as you can, because it's in those moments that you realize that some action is taken. For example, where we had gone, we realized that this area is underdeveloped, so much mining happening, but the people are not even benefiting. But when you begin to tell those stories in such a way, you prompt the action from either the policymakers or the miners themselves. So you are really in a very difficult space as a journalist. But I think ethics in this particular regard have to kick in. Where is your loyalty? What is your responsibility as a journalist? Are you going to just paint a beautiful picture of the booming mining industry, or you're going to talk about, okay, you're going to strike a balance? On one end, yes, this is what's happening, it's great, but on the other end, these mining entities can do better by ensuring that even as they develop in these areas, or as they mine in these areas, they should also consider the locals, as it were.
Right, no, thank you so much for that submission. And I think what I've picked from our submission is there are two key things really which are actually impacting journalism in Zambia and across other markets within Africa. So there is editorial versus commercial pressure. That's a serious issue. So I mean, majority of you, if not everyone who's coming from a media house, you know that there are two serious departments in any media house. So you'll have the editorial part, where you find your newsrooms and everything else. The commercial part, this is where you find your so-called sales team or marketing team. Their primary mandate is to bring in money, right? So because of these two competing priorities, or at least two competing divisions in one business, you'll find that some of the media houses that I've interacted with now, they would even demand that before something happens, it has to go through commercial, which ideally journalism ethics will never allow, because you trust that you're dealing with professionals who know what they're doing. Obviously, they'll come up with a particular topic or an area of interest where they want to investigate more and get information. But because of the commercial aspect, we see a lot of good things, like the way she's rightly put it, will fall under the carpet because no one will want to talk about them. Number two is, when we look at this, some of these things that are happening, obviously in the different communities and what the mines are doing, do we have the time and capacity to really go beyond what is being shared with us? Do we also have capacity to benchmark with other markets? What are they doing, let's say, for example, in DRC Congo, in terms of their copper output? Why are they doing more metric tons than Zambia? There could be a lot of factors which you can pick up and then maybe bring back home and be able to ask those right questions. Number three, do we have those relationships with the people that can give us information in the respective different mines or people operating in the value chain? Because it's also important to know the right person to call to get the information. Sometimes write to them a media inquiry. If they don't respond to you, that's still fine. You can form part of the story to say, we needed this information, they haven't come back to us. Number four is, are you able to convince your superiors in your respective media houses to say, this is something of interest? Can we take it up, but also let us be factual, at the same time applying our journalistic rules and ethics, so that we communicate this to obviously the vast majority. People need that information.
My name is Hope Ndao Luchembe. I am a partner in the corporate and commercial transactions team at Mwelwa Manda Legal Practitioners. Mwelwa Manda Legal Practitioners, or MMLP for short, is one of the top and biggest law firms in Zambia. We're a full-service corporate commercial law firm, and one of our practice areas and areas of expertise is mining. So yes, we're full-service corporate commercial, so we do all manner of corporate work, dispute resolution. We have a fully-fledged tax department, regulatory compliance and real estate, and also the commercial transactions team, where I sit, and we do a whole lot of transactions in banking and finance, mining, energy, capital markets, and all those kinds of transactions. So thank you to the Financial Insight team for this opportunity to come and basically share our insights on the regulatory framework surrounding mining. I guess the starting point is that the nature of minerals is that they are not renewable. And so there has to be regulation of this resource in a way that it's going to be mined and it's going to be exploited in a sustainable way. And how the law does that is that we have, over the years, had different mining policies by the government, and we've also had different mining legislation. Normally, the policy has to speak to the legislation and vice versa. And we've also seen that with the change of regimes, each regime will try and change how the minerals are regulated. Sometimes it's because of the public pressure. Like the previous speaker said, there's always that basically core of minerals are Zambian, should be Zambian owned, and therefore the local people should be able to benefit from that. And so currently what we have as the law that is regulating mines is we now have the 2024 Act, which is the Minerals Regulation Commission Act. This act came in to repeal and replace what we had before, which was the 2015 Mines and Minerals Development Act. And over the years, we have had different mining acts. We have also had different tax legislation and regulations applying to mines. Again, because it's not quite an easy resource to regulate. And also, you're always trying to look at, when it comes to taxes, how best do you tax the mining rights and the mining operations in a way that is still going to derive value for the country, but is also going to foster investment. Because the minute you overdo it with your taxing legislation, the mines are going to close. And like Mr. Mulonda said, the money is not with you and I. The money is with the investors who are coming in with the prospect that once they invest heavily into the sector, they'll be able to take their investment out. And so what you also find is that in addition to just regulating the mining sector and industry itself, mining operations will also exist in a broader regulatory framework. So you will have laws that will govern how, once you have invested in the mine, how do you take the money out? Because that will be your interest. Are there any exchange control restrictions, for instance? Can you take out the capital that you've invested? When dividends or interest payments are being paid on loans, would there be any taxes that are payable on those? So you're going to have different tax legislation, like the Income Tax Act, the Customs and Excise Duty Act, the VAT Act. You're going to have the Property Transfer Act. All those are separate pieces of legislation that are not just about mining, but where you're going to find mining regulation in any case. You will also have broader legislation like the Companies Act, which will basically regulate your corporate structure. So your corporate governance, how many shareholders do you need to have? How many directors do you need to have? Do they have to be resident in Zambia? If so, how many should be resident in Zambia? All those kinds of regulations will be found in your Companies Act. Then there's also the fact that you will need employees to operate your mining operations. So the Employment Code Act and other employment legislation will also be regulations that are important to the mining sector. You need to know, if you're going to hire employees, what kind of contracts do you need to have in place? What are the minimum employment benefits that you need to pay the employees? If there's a dispute, what are the rights of the employee and what are your rights as an employer?